health and well-being. Join us for a high-level dialogue on youth engagement and strategy with representatives from National Youth Council, Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Ministry of Health, United Nations Population Fund, and civil society organizations. Thursday, 24th June 2021 from 11 p.m. to 1 p.m. on UBC TV.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us on UBC TV, but also on NBS TV at this particular time, as we are going to talk to you about a particular interesting area and topic of discussion, the youth. The youth are quite a big number and, of course, have a lot of issues we have to talk about. Thank you for joining us for this high-level dialogue on youth engagement and strategy. Now, today's youth form a quarter of the world's population. You'll find that they are shaping social and economic development, they are challenging social norms and values, and they are building the foundation of the world's future. I would like to re-emphasize again, the youth are building the foundation of the world's future. So this high-level dialogue on youth engagement and strategy, here with me in studio to take us through and to be able to tell us what we should expect, how we are able to incorporate youth policies into the normal activities of government, how they are able to be catered for. Quite an interesting panel. Mondo is not a new face to you, from Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. Good morning.
Good morning, Sophie. Good morning, viewers.
Then a beautiful lady, Faith, from civil society. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, viewers.
Then the able chairman, Jacob, for the National Youth Council. Good morning.
Good morning to you and good morning to all the viewers.
Then, of course, when it comes to matters of health, you cannot forget about the youth. Agnes from Ministry of Health, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning to our viewers.
Okay, and of course, we do remember that we have our brothers and sisters there who should be part of this conversation, who should not be left out. On sign language with me is Elizabeth Ndakamkoni. Good morning, Elizabeth. Okay, now to start off, I believe in the morning you've been having a pre-engagement, a pre-activity online that some people might have not been privileged to be part of. I would like to start by asking Jacob to set the preamble for us. What is it that we were discussing about this morning that the viewer who has just joined into this panel discussion would like to know? Please take us through.
Thank you. This morning, the AIDS Information Center Uganda, the National Youth Council, and UNFPA, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, held a very cordial conversation with youth leaders around the country. This conversation was held online, and by youth leaders around the country, that's a very literal statement. We had youth leaders from Karamoja, we had youth leaders from as far as Sironko, we had youth leaders from as far as Kabale and central Uganda. So we had youth leaders from all the parts of the country discussing the status of young people in the country in the face of the pandemic. Very important in that discussion was especially the status of their involvement in issues of their health today and the health of their communities, and that is in the existence of the current pandemic. But that also extended to their own challenges that have been exacerbated or that have been pronounced now by the pandemic, especially the challenge of access to sexual and reproductive health and rights around the country. The emergence of very many ideas from these youth leaders was something that we did not foresee and we highly welcomed. We also learned that there is a very big situation that's emerging with gender-based violence in a youth perspective as they stay at home, and a mental health situation in the country that requires urgent attention. So we would say this morning we had a very good conversation about a big population of the country participating in leading the country forward in its hardest times today.
Okay, it looks like there were a lot of issues addressed, like you say, from across the country, and it looks like it still sounds like they are heavy. So in terms of your engagement with the different stakeholders, like the different ministries and the other partners on board, what are your key messages? What do you, yes, you have addressed them, but now with the pandemic and the way we see things going, it's not about, like, by the time the 42 days elapse, some people might have even lost it a little bit further. Yes. Not only among the youth, but even among the others. what are some of the key areas where you think like one of it, you know, we can be able to achieve and tick and say that area can be tackled or should be given the most urgent attention right now?
Thank you. I think that if we are to go by the statistics, there are two key areas that the pandemic has exposed for young people. The first is in the area of their livelihoods. Many young people have lost their livelihoods owing to the necessary restrictions to curb the pandemic. That has resulted into the areas where young people have most of their livelihood support coming from being restricted in operation, and that is largely in the informal sector of the country. 73% of young people are employed in the informal sector. But you also find that already before the 73%, there's a very big population of young people that was unemployed in this country. So when you have a very big unemployed situation, then you restrict opportunities because of a necessity to curb the pandemic, then young people have a double jeopardy in terms of livelihood. So that is one of the key areas. The second area is in the emerging and silent elephant in the room, which is the sexual reproductive health and rights situation in the country. We have had record numbers of teenage pregnancies. While in Italy and in Germany they are trying to pay people to have more children, in Uganda we are grappling with the situation of the lockdown bringing up too many children, unfortunately, among teenage mothers. So it becomes all the more important to have a conversation around those. And what we have been doing as a National Youth Council, first, I don't know whether by foresight or by the prevalence of these situations, a strategic plan for the years 2020 to 2025 already had these two areas among the 5 critical program areas that we are engaging. But the leadership of the ministry has also been very pivotal in how we have proceeded on these matters. Very recently as about just over a month ago, the ministry launched the coordination mechanism for youth in this country. That coordination mechanism is a very key tool for especially supporting issues around community-based emergencies that come from lapses in community approach. Issues like the new teenage pregnancy situation, issues like the COVID response, community resilience efforts. And so these are some of the issues that such a coordination mechanism brings on table. So working with partners, working with people like the AIDS Information Center, working with UNFPA, working with the ministry's policy environment, working with the national youth leaders at all the levels, from national, district, sub-county down to the villages, and working with the Sexual and Reproductive Health Alliance of Uganda, we are then able to tackle all these necessities head on.
Okay. Now, before I get to the different representatives from the ministry, I'd like to get to Faith. Are your sentiments the same as those for the national chairperson, or there could be other issues that you still feel need to be given a lot of attention?
Thank you so much. Once again, my name is Faith Myra, and I work with the SRHR Alliance as a youth country coordinator, but today I'm representing the civil society. And yes, I share the same sentiments with the National Youth Council chairperson, but then I would love to add that beyond the teenage pregnancies and the livelihood, we're having issues over child marriage happening, because right now education is becoming more very, static in a way that you find, I was having a conversation with one of the first-year students in university, and she was telling me that I can't believe I'm going to finish 3 years in first year. I started being in first year in 2019, 2020 I'm in first year, 2021 I'm in first year. So, and the way it looks like, it seems this is how 2021 will end when they're in first year. So that kind of, very static education progress is, discouraging the student, but also the parent who is paying the tuition. So what is the option? Is the marrying of these children? If I can marry off, parents are marrying off children to get food, to get rent, to get all this. another issue that is really coming up, which I feel like it needs pertinent attention, is you know, the issue around sexual and gender-based violence. Because you find there was a study that I was interacting with that the Ministry of Health did. It was an assessment on how young people are coping and also their experiences during the first lockdown of 2020. And these statistics shocked me beyond. Yes, I know this is happening, but then what was more worrying is, you know, 44% of the abused children or the abused adolescents and young people did not do anything about it, because first, because maybe it was their parent, or it was their relatives or their guardian or even their caretaker, and now they're stuck there. Now my question comes is, what is the, you know, the access to justice looking like for these survivors? Because it's important that as much as we're trying to, you know, support them to, you know, okay, report, you know, these cases, this is happening within the family, and some of them parents are looking at more of like protecting the family name, or maybe, you know, trying to, you know, cover it up because, oh, it's your uncle or it's your dad, you can't, you know, you can't do that. So it leaves me pondering, what about the mental status of this child who has gone through this abuse, and what is their future for them when it comes to relationship, maybe sometime when it comes to marriage, when it comes to all this, and maybe even their actual plans. I think this is something, mental health and access to justice, as they go hand in hand in regards to sexual and gender-based violence, needs to be addressed, especially the fact that children are stuck at home, maybe with their abusers. Some of these children have only their safe space at school. This is where they get to talk about things freely. This is where they get information about their sexual reproductive health. This is where they even access menstrual health products. Speaking about that, menstruation is something that is not being deprioritized, because a parent from the study we did last year as the Alliance, we realized, maybe I have to just to quote one of the respondents, says that her mother, my mother told me that if I survived without pads, you know, you can survive as well, because we cannot start buying you pads and your colleagues are going hungry, your brothers and sisters. So it's like that level of shift of priority, that now I cannot menstruate in peace, you know, just because we are all hungry and stuck at home. And of course, not to blame it on parents, is that of course it's hard. Parents are stuck at home with children, they have lost their jobs, they have no income. And, you know, they are also supposed to be like that anchor of hope, but they have lost it themselves. Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot that is happening in this. And maybe to mention also is the aspect of suicidal cases that are happening, you know. As we speak about mental health, you know, it is more of like we can associate it to sexual and gender-based violence, but then also there is this young girl who is experiencing changes on her body. Maybe she's getting bigger, maybe she's getting bigger boobs. She sees her colleagues are having small breasts, and at her age, you know, her age she's having a bigger bum. Or, you know, there is always this thing that comes to shock you. What is happening to me? Why is my age mate not having this? And what is the unfortunate part of this is they can't even access the clear information why this is happening to them. So this leads them to, you know, depression, anxiety, you know, loss of self-esteem. And these are cases that are actually, you know, escalating to even thinking maybe I'm not worth it. You know, they're looking for any kind of love or peace or care, but the parents are not maybe providing them. So these are issues that are really affecting young people out there, and I feel like we need to really look at a way of how do we reach these young people even in this lockdown, because it's important that we do not leave anyone behind. Speaking for young people living with different abilities, yeah, you look at young people living with albinism. These are young people that actually need treatment to prevent skin cancers and all that. But on the limitation of transport right now, that, you know, you can't move, you don't have a private car or a UG car, you know, number plate, you do not, a border can't take you, they have a very long distance to the health facilities. They were getting these, you know, treatments. They cannot be able to access them. Which risk are they having in terms of getting skin cancer? When you look at young people living with HIV, in that sense, they have to access their ART treatment. Beyond the ART treatment and them adhering, they need nutrition to be able to actually adhere to this treatment. But then you realize food is scarce right now, because nutrition is really not a priority as much. You know, we're all surviving. Maybe some of them are surviving on a cup of porridge or maybe a fruit. You know, that jackfruit or mango in the mango tree, the village tree, you know. So these are all issues that are actually going to, you will find that we're going to have, you know, a lot of a high prevalence on HIV new infections. And you know, now this kind of situation forces, you know, it's a whole cycle thing that it forces these girls or boys to end up, you know, going into transaction sex to be able to support themselves. And this is giving them a risk to acquiring STIs, including HIV, and also other, you know, complications leading to maybe the teenage pregnancies, the unsafe abortions, which are very rampant in Uganda, and also leading to, you know, fistula cases. And these are all things that are rotating in one thing that I feel like if we only just try to really make information available on sexual reproductive health, you know, accessible and available and simplify for them to understand, maybe they would have to make better choices. And then also availing these services. So I could talk a lot about these issues because this is something that I'm passionate about, also I work with every day, but these are things that are really getting worse in this time. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Faith. Before I get to Mondo, most of the issues seem to be rotating around the health aspect of it. And I believe as Ministry of Health, they have a plan, they have a strategy for it. They possibly are trying to see how they can address some of these key, you know, health-related concerns. Agnes, please, it's a time for you to share to the youth watching you right now. If you didn't know, some of them, by the way, are watching us on social media. They've joined us on the stream and would like to be part of this conversation later, but first from you.
Thank you very much. Once again, I'm called Agnes Sebawa. I work for Ministry of Health under the Adolescent and School Health Division. I am very, very happy my colleague has raised those issues. And we are very much aware that COVID-19 has had variations in the health and well-being of our adolescents and young people. And we are very much aware that most of our youths or young people, our adolescents, are confined in the home. But again, the beauty about it is that we've had an opportunity to have these children interact well with their parents. But again, still during this pandemic, we are very much aware that the temporary mitigation strategies to prevent COVID-19 have limited partly some of them from accessing SRHR information and services. But as the government of Uganda, there are several interventions that we have come up with or that we are working on. One, right now our focus is the continuity of care to health services. So we, as a ministry, we have developed the guidelines for the continuity of access to care and health services for our young people. Our focus now is to see to it that our young people are accessing services, both information and the services. So as I speak now, we are going to orient our district teams in the whole country on these guidelines and in ensuring that as they are providing the services, these young people are protected from acquiring infections, including COVID-19. We've also bridged the information gap because we know it very well that inadequate information has predisposed our young people from engaging in risky behaviors. We've bridged the information gap as a ministry. One, we have developed communication materials that are age appropriate, SRHR communication materials that are age appropriate, and they're widely disseminated within the districts. We've also gone ahead, we have a call center because we know that the issues of our young people go beyond violence. There are SRHR issues, there are issues to do with maternal health, there are issues to do with nutrition, there are issues to do with HIV and many more. So as a call center, we have a toll-free line that we have disseminated for our young people to call, and they receive information because we know now that our young people are confined in the homes. The call center toll-free line is free. Our young people call and they are given information that is age appropriate. And the other issue that I also wanted to bring to your attention is that for the last 2 months, we registered at least 50% of callers. But when you look at the nature of the calls were around growth and development, like Faith said, vibrates are growing big. There were also issues to do with HIV. There were also issues to do with menstrual health. So the issues that really kept coming in went beyond violence. So for us, like I mentioned, the services are still continuing. We've had the capacity of our health workers built. Because if you don't build the capacity of a health worker to respond to the diverse needs of young people and adolescents, what would you have gained? We have also tried to do that. When it comes also in terms of having the capacity of these young people also built, we've also supported them with SR, HR information, but also getting closer now to the community. How have the services been extended closer to the community? We've conducted integrated health outreaches, and when you look at those outreaches, they're integrated. These outreaches look at HIV, it looks at all SR, HR information, screening for gender-based violence, screening for HIV, and many more, because we understand that most of our young people live in hard to reach areas. We've also provided, in terms of policy, we've provided guidance to proper health eating, because we very well know that with the pandemic, you have to feed well. And our young people, we've always had issues to do with nutrition challenges between our young people and adolescents. We've provided that guidance, because there is a difference between having food, but do you know the proper feeding practices? What should I eat, when and how? We've also provided guidance. We've also updated our adolescent health policy, and when you look at that policy, it looks at the different dimensions. Issues to do with norms, issues to do with the disease burden, and many more. We've revised our policy documents. Still, in terms of coordination, you cannot have this without having proper coordination. At national level, we have a whole big technical working group on adolescents and youth productive health. That technical working group brings together the different ministries, different civil society organizations, private sector, the religious fraternity, the cultural fraternity, and even when you extend to the district. In terms of coordination, we've set up the district committees on adolescent health, and when you look at that composition of the committees on adolescent health, we have the youth represented there. We've also extended to the community. The community has the sub-county committees on adolescent health, and the composition is the same. But now, during this pandemic, for us, we think that working hand in hand with the community, existing community structures, is very key, because in the community we do have the village health teams, and our village health teams capacity is well built to respond to issues of youth and adolescents, and we are very much aware that one of their roles is to conduct home visits, but of course ensuring that the SOPs are maintained. They conduct home visits, and one of the activities there, giving health information, registering pregnant mothers, be it the young mothers who are adolescents, and also give the other health information. So as a government, that is, we are still doing more. The fact that now we are still living in the pandemic. Yes.
Okay. Then that brings me to another stakeholder, some of the big stakeholders, government, I would say. Mondo, Mr. Mondo, kindly, what is the ministry doing to regards to youth engagement? Because you can see there are a lot of issues that are being raised, and these are issues that have to be catered for within our policies, given that they are the percentage that covers the majority of the population. What is being done?
Thank you, Sophie. Sophie, my glasses are not compatible with the mask. If you could allow me to adjust my mask and put on the glasses, then I'll be able to communicate.
Okay.
I'm happy that everybody around me has put on a mask.
Okay.
Sophie, I want to start from the angle of the women, because I suspect that part of the reason the youth thought about us discussing this topic is what is happening within the women's political circles. And having about, you know, we have the majority on this panel, they are women, and we the men,
You're well
the minority. I want to congratulate the women of Uganda for taking a lion's share in the current cabinet setup. I said this because I was just looking at the office of the Prime Minister, and I was seeing the Vice President, a woman. I was seeing the Prime Minister, a woman. I was seeing the First Deputy Prime Minister, a woman. I was seeing the Third Deputy Prime Minister, a woman. And I say, yes, things are happening. Changes are being registered. And I think the youth in this country want to pick a leaf from what the women have done. Because this has not come on a silver platter. It has come as a result of a struggle to ensure the emancipation of women in this country, to ensure that the women are on the dining table, to ensure that the women are fully registered within the boardroom and doing the work that men have been doing for ages and decades. And to me, I congratulate all of you, the women who are here, the women who are on social media, the women who are watching, and all the women of Uganda. What is government specifically doing to ensure youth engagement strategy? The government of the Republic of Uganda, since the coming into power of the NRM government, has been extremely sensitive to the issue of participation of the young people in all aspects that affect them. And this has been documented right from the constitution of the LCs, local government councils. Wherever the NRM government was liberating, they were introducing the RC system. Many of you remember the RC system, resistance councils. And on every resistance council, there used to be a secretary for youth to specifically take care of the interests of the youth on that council. Progressively, when we came to the 1997 Local Government Act, we ensured that we entrench again the presence of youth on the councils, especially at LC 3 level, LC 5 level, representation by 2 councillors, one of whom had to be a female, to take care of the issues pertaining to the women, to the youth within the local council structure, local council setup. And this has continued. And along the way, around 1993, there was another revolution, the coming into place of the National Youth Council of Uganda. The National Youth Council of Uganda was born, and that's where Jacob comes in. But I must state here today that I'm a product of that first National Youth Council. I'm a product, a direct product of that council. And if sometimes I talk sense, then you know it's because I came from the National Youth Council. If I talk things that don't help this country, then it's because of somebody else's responsibility. But we went ahead within the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, 1995, to ensure that in order to entrench the representation or the engagement of youth in this country in all issues that pertain to them, we decided that Article 32 of the Constitution talks about affirmative action. Article 78 is talking about representation within the Parliament. So we went ahead to entrench representation of young people in the Parliament of Uganda, the executive, the legislative arm of government. And so many countries were saying, I think the NRM government is running out of ideas. How do you bring inexperienced young people into the legislative arm of government? We said, oh no, we have not run out of ideas, but we know that you cannot teach somebody how to drive without putting that person behind the driving wheel. And so that was the philosophy. We are happy that the youth councils have gone ahead to nurture and produce a number of young people who are now in very sensitive positions. So talk about youth engagement. If you want to go through the entire Parliament of Uganda, if you want to go through the entire Cabinet of Uganda, in a cabinet you'll get names like Honorable Peter Ogwang, you'll get names like Honorable Dennis, the Minister of State for Sports. You get names like Namayanja at the NRM Secretariat. You get so many names. But you also know that once upon a time, there was the Speaker of the National Legislative Assembly, Right Honorable Danny Kidega, Speaker of the East African Legislative Assembly, a direct product of the National Youth Council. And if I talk about names, there are so many in the cabinet, in the parliament, and that's youth engagement. That's meaningful youth engagement. Because we know that when you're talking about expertise on issues of young people, it's the young people who are the best experts because they live it, they know the problem better. Talk about unemployment, that was being quoted here. Talk about, sexual reproductive health. Talk about HIV/AIDS. Talk about missing out in participation in COVID. They know how it hurts. And so with us, we believe it's important for us to engage the young people, but have structures. You see, one of the presidents of America pointed out that Africa does not need strong men and women. Africa needs strong systems, mechanisms, legal frameworks, policy frameworks to be able to engage the problems that Africa faces. So with us, we think it is best to have the structures, to have the systems, and that's why we are working tooth and nail to ensure that we strengthen the youth councils, but also we strengthen the different youth coalitions out there. And that's why, like Chairman Jacobo pointed out, that just about 4 weeks ago, the government launched a national coordination mechanism for youth programs in Uganda. We are going to go ahead and do a mapping of what are these different youth organizations doing, where and how. So that at the end of the day, we know who is doing what, where, and we know where we are less represented, and therefore be able to deploy in those areas. We have various legal and policy frameworks, and my colleague Agnes talked about a number of them, and I don't want to repeat them. The issue of National Women Council, somebody can say, but those are women. Yes, but within those women, we have a number of youth. That's another coordination mechanism, the National Women's Council. You see, in Uganda, once you are 18, as much as we can say you are a youth, but you also qualify to be a woman. So within the National Women Council, we have thousands of our young girls learning how to lead, but also using the structure to engage in different things. People with Disabilities Council. Again, we have our youth who have disabilities. They are within those structures. And we are strengthening those structures to ensure that they produce the people that we need to lead the next generation. As she has talked about the adolescent health policy, but let me also talk about the African Youth Charter. These are some of the policies that lead us, but we also know that in 2016, we reviewed the National Youth Policy 2001, and we came up with a revised policy 2016. Again, this leads us in what to do. The African Charter, the National Youth Policy 2016, talk about these other so many policies that we have in place. All of them are being positioned to help us engage the young people in addressing issues that pertain to their own growth and well-being. Let me talk quickly about the sexuality education framework for the out of school, which is supplementary to the sexuality education framework for the in school. Minister of Education came up working with us and civil society organizations. We came up with the National Sexuality Education Framework for the in school. Now, Minister of Gender was charged with coming up with that for the out of school, because we have them in big numbers. We have youth in school, but we have youth out of school. So if you have a strategy to do with those in school, what about those out of school? I must say that we are progressing very well, and that in the process of policy making, we are at senior management level. Senior management of Ministry of Gender, having got inputs from the different youth, the different ministries, departments, and agencies. So now that top management is fully constituted, senior management is going to wind up its business about this strategy and send it to the top management policy to look at it and be able to dispose it off. Let me also say that in terms of talking about things that impact on young people's participation, one of them is the issue of poverty. Poverty, oftentimes, which is a result of not being engaged in terms of employment. That a number of young people in this country, they have a problem with employment. There are those who are underemployed, but there are those who are completely unemployed. We have therefore come up as government with a national action plan for youth employment. We believe that if we address the issue of poverty among the young people, we shall be addressing a number of other people. What Faith talked about, not being able for some young people to have pads, some girls going with men because of being carried for free on a border, young women doing this and this because they want to eat chips and chicken. I think if we address the issue of poverty, like Mahatma Gandhi said in one of his writings, that poverty is the worst form of violence. And poverty anywhere is a threat to prosperity everywhere. And somebody else said, and I found this man in the corridor, he's a religious leader, he said that, in Africa, the poor people don't sleep because they are hungry. And the rich people don't sleep because the poor are awake. And so either way, poverty affects all of us. And having a strategy that addresses poverty among the young people especially is extremely critical. Hence, the National Action Plan on Youth Employment, which again, at the ministry level, is at the senior management level. And now that we are having the ministry constitution fully constituted, we are going to take this to another level, which is the top management, to discuss this and be able to forward it for discussion by cabinet. While I was listening from a distance, I heard somebody saying that one of the things that frustrates them is that the government takes long when coming up with policies. Yes, it's true, because of the process that we go through. And this is mandatory, that from conceiving the why you need a policy, you now go into getting consulting for you to get a report on does this issue require policy intervention. So you go out there and find out the evidence. Because before you present to cabinet, they will say, did you consult? And they don't stop there. They will ask you, did you consult widely? And if you consulted widely, where is the evidence? So the evidence through the consultations. And so after you do that, then you think about putting together a cabinet memorandum. This is the process of policy making. The cabinet memorandum has to be submitted to Ministry of Finance. But before you submit to Ministry of Finance, you carry out a RIA. A RIA is regulatory impact assessment, which looks at it this way. Can't we do without a policy and simply have a strategy to address this issue? Must you go all the way to have the policy? And if the RIA says, yes, the best way to address this issue is through coming up with a policy, then you are home and dry. You can go ahead and submit to Ministry of Finance to give you a certificate of financial implication. The certificate of financial implication communicates whether, if that policy is in place, it can be implemented under the MTF, or you need money. And if you need money, finance has to say, yes, we can get that money, or yes, we can't get that money. And so you have to look at the options. Once the policy is now discussed at cabinet level, that's when it's cleared to become a policy. And therefore, it's true that the process is long, but it's deliberate. It's deliberate to ensure that you don't leave any lacuna in terms of how this policy at the end of the day is going to be implemented. So I want to say that the government is doing everything possible to ensure the engagement of the young people, but we want it even to start earlier than when they are youth. If it can start at when these are children, it gets fully entrenched within them. But some of you in your homes, you don't want to have my children participate in the decisions at that level, and that's a problem. And if you do that, then you are in disagreement with the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, which talks about participation. Then you are also contravening Article 12 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Children. You are also contravening the principles and provisions of the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of a Child. So children need to participate. And let's not think that children have no ideas. Children have ideas. All you need is to prepare them for an interaction. Sophie, it doesn't cost you much to consult your children about what they want to eat for. But the fear that they are going to ask for things that are very expensive is what makes people fear to ask them. But these people are very reasonable people. They will know even that daddy may not afford that. And so they will not ask for the things that are out of the way. They will ask for things that they know can be. You will be surprised that once in a while they will say, can we eat some vegetables? And yet you thought they are going to ask for chicken, they are going to ask for fish, they are going to ask for all this. So if we entrench participation among the young people early enough, and we go ahead to groom them, because some of the things that sometimes hinder their participation is lack of knowledge. You know, to participate, to fully engage, you must have the knowledge.
True.
But also the other thing, and I'm happy that my young brother Jacobo is here, I think we have to fight the issue of entitlement mentality. I normally hear young people saying, government should. No. You see, there's a man called Mandela. He wrote a book. There is no easy walk to freedom. What does this mean? It means that freedom is not given on a silver platter. Freedom is struggled before. The man was in prison for 27 years, struggling against the apartheid regime in South Africa. So when I meet somebody and he's talking about the women have not been given on a silver platter. They have been persistent and consistent. And I'm looking forward to the youth doing the same thing. Being persistent, consistent, and having tenacity, and being focused. Once that happens, then we shall have full engagement of the young people. I've not lost hope. I'm very hopeful because I can see very many young, dynamic people within the current cabinet setup, and even in higher positions within the Interim Secretariat. When you look at Right Honorable Tadong, the Secretary General of the party, when you look at Rose Namayanja was the first female chairperson of a youth council at the district level, and that was Ruwero. And when I see her there as Right Honorable Deputy Secretary General, then you can see that the party has been gripped by the young people, and I'm looking forward to seeing more young people in there. The old people, don't stone me. That's where we need to go. I thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that beautiful history where you've taken us actually into the walk, and we get a better feel of how the youth are actually being involved and engaged. At this particular point, I'd like us to take a very short break for like 2 minutes. Then we get back, the discussion will still continue. And for those of you who would like to participate in this discussion, it is on Zoom. You can always be able to raise your hand, and then we can be able to allow you to participate in this discussion just after this break.
Below the age of 30. The unfortunate reality is that the majority of the youth continue to face unemployment, underemployment, lack of skills, and a lot more challenges. The good news is that youth are effective advocates who can hold their governments accountable for delivery of promises, policies, and programs that affect their health and well-being. Join us for a high-level dialogue on youth engagement and strategy with representatives from National Youth Council, Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Ministry of Health, United Nations Population Fund, and civil society organizations. Thursday, 24th June 2021 from 11 p.m. to 1 p.m. on UBC TV.
Digital Tracking Solution. The Digital Tracking Solution, DTS, is used by both local manufacturers and importers of products specified by Commissioner in a gazetted notice. It is compulsory for these taxpayers to apply tax stamps.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Century Points when you deposit, send and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go. MTN.
Pick of the day on UBC. Brought to you by was brought to you by.
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Century Points when you deposit, send and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go. MTN.
What does it mean to be closer together? It's taking the last bus home for a surprise visit. Closer together is strangers finding a connection. It's bringing home something much more than a box. It's the warmth of home, or the beginning of something new. There's magic in sharing the things that we learn, because it's those things that bring us close together.
Uganda has the world's youngest population with over 78% below the age of 30. The unfortunate reality is that the majority of the youth continue to face unemployment, underemployment, lack of skills, and a lot more challenges. The good news is that youth are effective advocates who can hold their governments accountable for delivery of promises, policies, and programs that affect their health and well-being. Join us for a high-level dialogue on youth engagement and strategy with representatives from National Youth Council, Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Ministry of Health, United Nations Population Fund, and civil society organizations. Thursday, 24th June 2021 from 11 p.m. to 1 p.m. on UBC TV.
Okay, welcome back from that very short break, and we still continue with a high-level dialogue on youth engagement and strategy. I wish you only knew what we were also talking about here at the time when we had the break. Some of these funny conversations here and there. But now, I would like to come back to Jacob, because a lot has been said by Mondo, and I believe you can attest to it or tell us differently on whether some of the things that he has said, like in terms of, do you feel that some of the things they're saying in terms of like, they will lead into a strategy, they will lead into a policy, they're taking us way forward? Because it was quite a nice journey to hear where we have started from, where the youth have started from, and the direction we are headed to.
Thank you. I think that the Assistant Commissioner has made it very clear. I'll pick from first the point of engagement, and he has taken this down to the unit of the family. How we train young people as they come up in terms of engagement informs how they become in terms of even how they make choices. There are processes for discerning certain things, what their minds go through to be able to weigh up what is good and what is not good for them. And I think that that is very important. Of course, I was laughing a bit when he said that when a parent does not include the child, you are contravening the Constitution. And he went as far as including the United Nations Charter on the child's the rights of the child. These are true. It's not, but of course, when you tell a parent, an African parent, there are so many jokes about us in Africa, and being surprised that a child can say, "Why are you asking me to lie down?" But that's the process that we need to get to if we are very serious about actually developing our engagement processes as a country and involving our young people in some of these conversations. So then, in terms of engagement, everything he has said is important. He hinted on the sexuality education framework. That is a very necessary undertaking, because believe me, everyone goes through phases in life that require sexuality education, but very little as below 10% of our families engage in conversations around sexuality between parents and their children, and depending on which culture you're settled in, that conversation may never happen until at a time when you're actually getting married, when in this generation you probably no longer need it as much. So that framework would be a very important tool in the nurturing of what our society should deal with, and in the advocacy of what we think is actually now a very necessary foregoing for the country. The challenge we have been having in terms of policy framework in this country has been around sentiment. Okay, some of this sentiment is well intentioned, that because people have not seen something before, they are therefore cautious about it. But in terms of policy, I think that what works for the country mainly is evidence-based policy frameworks. And as long as there is evidence, sustainable evidence, there should be permission for the country to move forward on policy frameworks. And this, for me, is now speaking more to religious organizations. Some of the challenges that we have had in the country actually have been about how to reconcile the national policy framework to religious beliefs and sentiments, and trying to find a balance. And this also has been the hindrance in many ways to frameworks around and policies around sexuality education, policies around child marriages in communities, and ending teenage pregnancy. And so the country needs to put its foot down on some matters. For instance, there is the impasse of whether, as we are saying, teenage pregnancies are bad for the country and child marriages are bad. It is okay to say that in a mosque. We need to also make a decision as a country. We cannot say we are moving forward in one direction, but in a particular section of the community, that is a no-go discussion. Then we are moving 2 steps in front and perhaps a step behind, and taking too long to reach our place. I think that as a country, we need to find the ideals that unify us, and we say these are the ones with which we shall move forward. Everyone can fit within them because they are not bad, and they are good in the whole sense for moving forward. And I would like to applaud the Assistant Commissioner for that. The question of entitlement has also come up, and how young people speak more towards entitlement. I'll not speak to it with regard to what young people need. I'll speak to it largely with regard to what young people can do. Because the changes around the world anywhere have not only been inspired by government. Some, and many and most of them, have been inspired by community initiatives to solve the immediate community problem. I'll give you an example of what Madam Agnes here said. The village health teams are a very effective monitoring unit for situations in their communities, but they do not have supervision from the Ministry of Health on whether they are actually in their villages and whether they are actually working so that they can be paid at the end of the month. Village health teams are largely volunteer movements that cater for the well-being of that community. So in the event that young people would like to have some sort of arrangement of change in their communities, it will also be very important that they first ask at what level can we come in, and where can our efforts stop. as we are moving forward on trying to have grand efforts at a national level, it's also important that the small steps that can be made by community youth are brought in together. Yes, I agree that in the progress of our political participation as a country, many of the young people groomed in the national youth councils and youth structures go up into governance, and it's important. But I'd like to pick it from the wheel, which Mr. Mondo said. The wheel, you have to put someone behind there to drive. And for me, the previous cabinet is going to deliver to a country that is only growing younger. It will be very important that even in future cabinet faces, there are more young faces we can quote, not just people that have come through the youthful phases. It is important to develop, but it is important to merge that with having young people that will learn now so that the country can go forward. So I will be telling His Excellency as much that we will encourage him further because it's his prerogative in the next reshuffle. If it comes in the next few months, it can have a bigger percentage. So so the commissioner can also say the youth have taken the lion's share of appointments. So it is, but it's a very critical necessity in this country because you have a very big population that needs to stop complaining and start offering leadership. And that leadership must be able leadership. In that sense, the country needs to be putting forward its faces that are developing among that generation. There are youth members of parliament that are very able, that could also get such appointments. There are very many young leaders across districts that are also very able. So it is important that these young people are given these opportunities to actually interact. If in the Ministry of Health, the very able Dr. Ruth Acheng is addressing a press conference and allows a young emerging doctor who is a state minister for health, maybe at the age of 28 or something, the relation and the conversation around the country is a bit upbeat, and participation is more peer-to-peer than it is just, not just, but than it is given by some sort of authoritarianism in the person with the authority. So in that sense, it's also very important. Finally, I think that we need to give time to grooming. One of the challenges that we face in this country is actually the capacity question. The capacity question is very important. In as much as young people need to occupy spaces where they influence decisions, the question of how many of them can actually be very steady on a path and how many of us can actually insist on doing something with meticulous nature and with long-term focus is also very important. And so this is now the role that the National Youth Councils play. When we give small responsibilities in communities to our structures, it is important that government supports the National Youth Council to be able to do that. Why? Because then you're training those leaders to be a different breed of quality when it comes to eventually the bigger positions in the near future when they have these positions. So it's very important. On the whole, the face of it, I think that generally the conversation has descended into one question for me. Can the country put its big percentage of young people in a big situations of responsibility when the country needs people to show up? Because like now in this pandemic, we need young people to be voices for fighting the pandemic, not voices for condemning only government action. That is international best practice, you know. You need young people to be at the forefront of actually speaking about what is necessary, but also on combating the things that are emerging from the pandemic, that for long have been with us, but have only been now more pronounced because of the restrictions that are unfortunately necessary. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacob, because you've really put it out, the way you feel about it and in terms of how you're looking at it realistically. I get to you, Faith. What do you see as gaps in youth engagement, especially at policy formulation and implementation?
Thank you so much. So before I even respond to that, I would just love to, you know, pick it from Rieko a bit about the capacity of young people in terms of participation. And you know, capacity is a two-way traffic. You know, it's a two-way traffic that the young person is willing to learn about this particular thing, and you are providing the training or that session to, build that capacity of that young person. So in most cases, there is a mismatch in that okay, and I will speak in terms of, okay, government will come up with very interesting opportunities and, livelihood programs to see that actually young people are on board, trying to address these issues. The question I often ask myself is, how many of those vulnerable young people were actually part of the development of these projects or know the idea of it? And that has really contributed to so much failure in terms of some of these things. That, young people will come and, organize themselves. They are very smart. They'll organize themselves, put themselves together, go for funding, get the money, go and eat it, Why? Because you're giving them a project they don't want to do. You're telling them it either has to be maybe pottery, or maybe it has to be this or that, or plumbing, or whatever the case is. So you're giving them options that they don't want, I have had conversations with young people who would say, I wish maybe I could, these are women, these are young women, I wish maybe I could learn I want to be a bus driver, or I want to be something, something that is not so gender for women, like, society has put it. So that leads me to a question is, maybe it's not that the government is not actually doing the efforts to really engage young people or to, build their capacity. Maybe they're just giving them the wrong, the ones that are not interested in, yeah? And that takes me to the point of engagement, right from the ideation of all these projects. Secondly, when we speak about this capacity of it all, now we have done a lot of advocacy, and I will speak from a point of civil society organization, that as civil society with different programs and of course development partners, we have really tried to, engage young people, build their capacity basically in advocacy, programming and all that, which they're actually now good at, I'll give an example of a structure that has really worked, and maybe I'm a product of it. And one is the SRHR Alliance has a structure called the Youth Advisory Committee. And there's a practice that actually made me, when I was a member, to be on tenterhooks, to learn, but also be informed. One is, yes, you are representative of your youth constituency in that organization, because the Alliance is a consortium of organizations. So as you're going for the technical team meetings and the board meetings, you have to actually consult with the young people, the grassroots, the beneficiaries of the program, so that you bring the issues on board. Yeah, it's not about your ideas of, now this is my experience, this is how I've been feeling in this program. No, get it right from the start on the ground, then you take it up. And because of this, and then also availing opportunities, we've been trained a lot. And today I speak ably because I've gone through various capacity buildings, recommendations of, online courses, try to do this and that. And of course, that has built my capacity. Now, not every young person has the, priority out there to, maybe the privilege to do that. So I think for me, it's the question of the available capacity building opportunities. How are they available to the young people actually interested in them? How are they accessible in terms of inclusion from the ones with disability, the ones in, refugee settlements? Uganda hosts one of the biggest, population of refugees. How are they available and, accessible in terms of language? Like, I can understand actually what you're teaching, or I can make use of it and bring it to myself on the ground and ground it to actually teach another person. Moving away from that, you asked me about the gaps that are actually in the participation or youth engagement in terms of policy making process. Currently, I am part of some discussions that's going on, the FGDs, the focus group discussions about the same issue. But one of the things that actually shocked me the most is realizing that I was having a discussion with, these are advocates, these are actually empowered young people. But the question of what process does the policy take to actually become a policy? I was shocked to know, like, they only know the consultation, like this bit of the consultation. I'm like, okay, this is the airlight of, you know, civil society young people. Yeah. What is happening to the one that actually doesn't know anything? Exactly. So we need to start right from the point of young people understanding, like Commissioner Mondo was actually explaining, you know, the process takes this to the other, to the other. How do we take this conversation that is very candid, you know, to that village level? That a young person knows, maybe from the parish planning committee or to the you know, health management committee, health unit management committee at the health facility, that they understand this process, that what I'm saying today is going to translate to a policy that will impact even my children, grandchildren, and the rest. Yeah. So I think we need to start from there. That's a big gap. I said, okay, if we do not know what it actually takes, then what are we doing? You know. Secondly, when you're speaking about these issues and you want to engage young people, of course, most of the time, you are consulting with them with already what you have in mind, that we want this policy to take this direction and all that, which is okay. But at this point, I ask myself this question a lot, what is the flexibility of government to actually twist the direction of a policy with the emerging issues that come out from this consultation? Because all the time young people are, you know, engaged in the consultation and then the validation of the policy. Oh, this is what we found. Is this the true representation and all that? And again, it comes to the level of capacity. How is this young person, you know, capacitated to be able to actually meaningfully participate in this process? You know, it is okay. You know, it's easy to say, oh, Myra, you know, we are inviting you to this event or to this high-level dialogue, and I come and be present, you know, sign in, we had young people represented. Thank you. But what did I do there? The question is, what is my contribution there? How does it translate to represent the issues of other young people that are not in the room? Yeah. So at the end of the day, we need to build the capacity of this young person to understand the policy process, to know the value of their contribution, to also know that they're representing a huge percentage of the population that is not just them from their point of view. That comes to me to the young person themselves. How much, as a young person out there watching me, how much knowledge are you trying to acquire through reading, through, you know, understanding these things? And what is your role in making sure you understand these things or seeking, you know, mentorship, support, and all that? I like to see that young people get proactive, because sometimes things are not going to be done for us, like Commissioner said. As young people, you need to walk to that LC1 or RDC, confront them. And sometimes they might, you know, they will say they will take you to jail. But sometimes you need to ask a pertinent question. You're like, excuse me, sir, can I ask a question? What is this going on? You need to be aware of what is going on. And that's an initiative that I feel like it's also a gap from the young person's side. But above all, I have been privileged to be part of some of these processes, the adolescent health policy, the whole process. I've been part of it. But then it is also important that we start, you know, bringing in more young people. Like Jacob said, when we are looking at so many young people that we are creating these things for, the question is, what is the percentage of their representation in the development of these things? Because until we appreciate that youth-adult partnership is one of the best models we can use to actually get, because yes, we need adults, they are aware, their expertise. I cannot say I am the, you know, expert in all these things, but through working with adults, you know, through engaging with them and also trying to do efforts to learn to, you know, I have come to appreciate some processes. I've come to understand this is what it will take, but then also this is what I need to do. Yeah, and also take the initiative to ask, how do I do this? But until young people take the initiative and also adults start becoming receptive in the sense that, okay, this is a young person, they may not have experience, but are they willing to have, you know, to learn, do they have the passion? Then we can see how we fetch our way forward. And I think lastly that I want to say on this, the gaps that are existing in basically youth engagement. There is a lot of assumption that, you know, as a young person, when you're not engaged as you, young people are not engaged. Yeah, and this is the assumption that is actually making people go out there, rant about the government, also rant about everything. Yeah? And then also, that poses the question of, okay, if you're not the one engaged, you need to find out where your issues are addressed. You know, this is most of the time that I do. I mentor a lot of young people, but I also work with a lot of young people because I coordinate youth things. You know, someone comes and is like, I was supposed to be there. Why wasn't I there? And I'm like, you know what? You didn't show up. You were invited, you didn't show up. So go check the report. If your issue wasn't represented, suggest. You know, it's as simple as that. So that brings me to the point of, okay, that one that wasn't, now the one who was invited, how much have you consulted with the others that are not invited? Most of the time, even when I was engaging in the adolescent health policy process, I would go on my Facebook, you know, just throw in, okay, there is this issue. What do you think? What do you think should be included in this policy? Maybe on my Twitter, on my LinkedIn, to just pick up ideas. But then also see, maybe can I use my network, the youth advisory committee members to reach out, like to just make sure that everyone is aware this process is happening and can they contribute. So I think it's more of like, let's appreciate that government is doing some effort. Yeah, and civil society is doing so much to engage young people. But then, in terms of implementation, in terms of all that, it's happening. But when it comes to, there's basically gaps here. The monitoring of this implementation, the process, in terms of development, it's still lacking. And I think we can do something. So all these gaps, I really, maybe I will say more about the recommendations later, but yeah, there is a lot that is happening that is creating the gaps on both the government, but also on the young people themselves.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. It's very true in terms of what you're saying. Agnes did talk about Ministry of Health having come up with some of those materials, especially to do with reproductive health. But now we would like to talk about issues of language. Because, yes, how are we, because like right now with this era and the season and time in which we are, it is such a big bang. How are you translating or trying to make sure that even the person down there in the most remote area can be able to understand the messaging that we are putting out across to them? Because it starts with us. You have to ensure you keep yourself safe before anybody else comes in for us to start ranting.
When you're developing communication materials, you first ask yourself, what is my target? What is it that I want to address? I remember in my earlier communication, I mentioned that young people are going through many challenges that include HIV, psychosocial challenges, nutrition problems, alcoholism, name it. We've gone ahead to translate our communication materials in the 22 local languages to see to it that even the other child in Nakapiripirit who cannot read English could understand the communication materials. But even there are people who are supporting them to interpret these messages very well. We've supported these service providers. We've trained them, we've oriented them on how to use the communication materials for young people so that when they're engaging the young people, they know what to communicate. But even the other thing I wanted also to re-echo, if you can give me an opportunity, we were saying that our youths are not engaged. There are reasons. There are reasons as to why they are not able to fully participate. That's why in our background discussion, I really said that it starts with the mother. If the pregnant outcomes are not good, it will affect the growth and development of this child. And once the growth and development of this child is affected, there is no way this child would be able to really participate. Then also the other early childhood interventions. This child is born, the early childhood interventions. If they are not good, what will you expect from this child? Much as you have this child supported with information, the early childhood interventions like nutrition, you see the poor nutrition status affects the growth and development of this child. Immunization, if this child is not fully immunized, there are challenges that are going to come along the way. But again, back to what we were talking about. I remember 2 years ago, we conducted an adolescent health landscape. And there are so many issues that my colleague Faith talked about. But the most critical issue that really came out was inadequate information. Inadequate information has predisposed our young people in engaging into risky behaviors. So for us, we think the communication materials, then they are disseminated. They're disseminated to the different districts in the 22 local languages, in that even the other child who is not able to speak the other language. We have children in the refugee settings, with different languages. So our materials are fully translated, and the people to support these young people to interpret this information are fully oriented and trained on how to use them. This starts from the district level, the district health officers, the assistant district health officers. Back in the community, we have the peers, the peer educators, we have the VHTs and the other group of people. Thank you.
Okay. At this particular moment, because I can see we are running out of time, we could talk and talk and talk all throughout the day and a lot of issues. I don't know if we have any participants on Zoom who would like to chip in and throw in a word or two into this conversation. This panel discussion is open to all of you, but I would also like to say thank you so much for you who are following it online and part of the virtual discussion. So you're able to see that you're ably represented by your youth leaders here who are talking about some of these issues. Okay, if we don't have any participants on Zoom, I would like to come to ask the golden question to Mondo, and then later it will also fall to you, Jacob. Yes, I call it the golden question. Because as I've been listening through to the conversation, I was like, you really need this. What is the way forward for youth engagement and framework that support youth in Uganda? Because we surely need, after having heard all this, and of course a lot more will still come in, I'm sure there's a way forward for youth engagement and framework that support the youth in Uganda.
Thank you, Sophie, for that golden question. And as we have said in the discussion, it has to start early enough. And you can ask me how early. Early during early childhood development. That the child is growing up in a culture of democracy, of participation. I was reading an article, you see, a few days ago. I don't know whether, Jacobo, you took note or you participated. We had Father's Day. And so one of the various articles that were running, they were saying the family is in a crisis. And one of the articles that I read particularly by a friend of mine called Dr. Geoffrey Seal, it said the family is in a crisis the world over. For many children's homes is a lifeless house characterized by harsh and neglectful parenting, especially by the fathers. I read another, and it was trying to answer the questions we are putting up here, and why things happened the way they were happening. This by Dr. Myers Monroe. He says, a father is not just a title. It is a role you play, and how you play it matters. Not just the individual, but the nation. He goes ahead to talk about the language history of father. He says the language history of the English word father is from the Hebrew word Abba, which has three profound meanings. And these include being the source of everything, including genes. Remember, the father is determining the sex of the child. If you release the X chromosome and it adds with the X, to be a girl. If you release the Y chromosome and it adds with the
boy,
it will be a boy. I think I'm right to that extent.
You're right.
Yes. my rudimentary biology that I know of. So he said, being the source of everything, including genes, being the sustainer of whatever comes out of him, sustainer of whatever comes of him, including the children, being a foundation. The issue is this what we are saying? The answer is no. That there is a lot that even for Jesus, that God had to look for a foster father called Saint Joseph, who had to be the father to train. And so the training of participation, the training of engagement must begin within the family. And if this happens from the family, then the child will grow up knowing that I have a job to play. I have a role to play. The construction of a child's mind, or construction of a child's mind from that age, then you'll see what comes out as fruits. 2, it's a question of structures and strengthening those structures. Jacobo agreed with me, and so did Faith and Agnes, that we have the structures. All we need to do is do much more than we have done hitherto. But these structures must build on what has been done at the family level as the foundation and the most basic structure of child growth, of governance, of everything. That the best things that we know of, we learn them when we are young from our families. So strengthening the National Youth Council, strengthening the coordination mechanism, strengthening the coalitions where faith comes from, and strengthening the cultural and religious systems. Sophie, we should not forget this, because there are a number of things that embed or inhibit the participation of the young people that are dressed in cultural gaps. Like saying, you are too young. This is an elder people's meeting. This is not a meeting for women. You know, in our culture, you know, you have not been, if you're in Uganda, you have not been circumcised. Yeah? And so to deal with some of these impediments, you have to engage the cultural leaders themselves. Some of those that are religious, you remember, I don't remember how recent, but it's recent that we could start seeing women reverends. There was once upon a time when women would not reach those levels. And of course, I think there are still some levels that they don't reach. I've not seen a woman pope. Maybe there was one. But people, you may laugh, but these are critical things.
Yes,
and these are carried or run by religious dogmas, what we call doctrines, dogmas. This can be done, this cannot be done. Somebody comes and he says, in my home, a girl child is not supposed to sit on the dining. That's for boys. The girl has to sit down, and that's where, with the mother, and that's where they belong. These are things that limit the participation of the children, and more especially the girl child. They say, for us, we are not made for the boardrooms, we are meant for the kitchen. And despite the fact that we have done a lot of role modeling in that area, that we are seeing women vice president, because this is not the first one. We had the Kaziwe before, Her Excellency Kaziwe, and we have had a number of women in those places. But I also agree with my colleagues that we have to do more in terms of mentoring, grooming, and coaching, but also role modeling.
Yeah.
If I ask my colleagues on the panel, they speak very excellently, and apart from Faith, who said he's coaching and mentoring some people, many of us are not mentoring anybody. Can you put off time to say, I have somebody I'm mentoring? I was happy the other day, Agnes walked into a child participation parliament with a girl from her village, and the girl was excited.
Yeah.
But those are very rare. Those I see sometimes coming with such children, they must be their children, trying to groom them. But are you grooming anybody around the village? And I always say that we need to go back, consistent with what the First Lady has been emphasizing time and again, that we need to go back to the old African adage that it takes a village to bring up a child.
Yeah.
Once we do that, then that will hope a lot of things happen. But to get back to your question, all we need to do is to start with the family. Go ahead to work with the cultural and religious institutions. But also go ahead and look at the systems that are in place and strengthen them to be able to deliver. In a few days, weeks' time, I will be engaging with the Youth Parliamentary Forum to, taking ahead this issue of engaging. We shall be interacting with the Youth Parliamentary Forum, which is forming now, to ensure that the ideals that we stand for, they understand them, they cherish them, and work for them to ensure that youth engagement is not just about youth in Parliament, but it's at every level, including in their constituencies. If they put in place policy committees, now we are going to the parish level, parish model of implementing things. Am I going to have my youth at the parish level from the youth council participate in the decision that take place out there? Or they are going to be left out and say, you are leaders of tomorrow. I thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Jacob, I had requested that you're going to add on to this.
The golden question.
The golden question, yes.
I don't know why I use the word add on, because it's very hard to add on the wisdom.
You've gotten the words of wisdom.
He has come from the National Youth Council to leading efforts of youth in the country. So
and I can see you heading in that direction.
But I'll try.
Okay.
I'll try. I think that for me, the first way forward is for youth leadership in the country to deliver as one. And I'm very glad that the Assistant Commissioner has made it clear that he's engaging the Uganda Parliamentary Forum on Youth Affairs, which is in the process, I think, of forming their leadership. The intention of having all these structures that are youth-led and youth-focused is not simply to be existent as structures, but it is to solve the increasing issues around young people. And for me, it is very important that all these attempt to do it with synergy and not with either competition or any other kind of impediment. So I think that it's very important that we actually achieve a way forward where what the Minister of State for Youth and Children Affairs thinks we need to solve first is the same as what the National Youth Council thinks. It's the same as what the Youth Department of the Ministry thinks. It's the same as the agenda in legislation or even in conversation that the youth MPs are presenting. And it is also agreeable to the President with evidence. I think that then you're making quick traction. So delivering as one is very important. And on the 12th of August, the International Youth Day, there are activities leading up to it. I had not yet briefed the Assistant Commissioner, but we have already begun discussion with the youth MPs on having another dialogue that is supposed to focus on what are the action points for next year. What are the things that we need to deliver on together and with synergy? So we are, and this is not informed by political lenses. This politics in many ways is an impediment to the issues of society. The opposition will always try to tell you something that is showing you how wrong you are, while the government politicians will be trying to tell you what is right about government. And many times you find that the middle ground is covered by civil society actors like Maria here, who are actually engaging the youth, while we are arguing over the sexual reproductive health framework or something. So it is important that you get the politicians away from the politics for some time and introduce civil society in the room to tell us what the year challenges have been, where are the statistics, and how do they want us to engage politically so they can also engage. So I think that this platter of collaboration is very important. But the second thing is also to have young leaders understand all the dynamics around them and contribute meaningfully to the development direction of the country. If the country is talking about a Vision 2040, then the youth leaders should be talking about what is our contribution and how do we make sure our contribution is felt. If the country is talking about an East African community, the youth leaders must ask what is our contribution. Today Africa is talking about an African free trade area. The youth leaders in the country must be able to coalesce with youth leaders around the continent to prepare, because those things are not for His Excellency, the President of our country, he is going to go away, and we are going to be the ones to implement those things. So the earlier we start, this point has been underscored very strongly here, the earlier we start to engage in these frameworks and the development direction of the country, the more capacity we build, like Faith would require, and the more service we give to this country. The other thing is that we need to actually achieve more financing in terms of what young people need. And more financing is not per se for the NYC alone. The National Youth Council has always had a financing issue. We have always said to government, can you give us more money? But even the youth department of the ministry doesn't have money. Even the civil society organizations that work on youth never have all the money they will ever need. So across the board, we call on all actors to actually fund more young people-led initiatives. We call on government to fund more youth institutions in the country, such that we can have the face of this country, which is quoted statistically, become the face also of the change in the society of this country, and have those young people leading the country onto its end parts. Finally, I want to say that it's very important for young people to be willing to learn. Sometimes the impediments we have found is that, and I've learned this through participating in politics, is that people can insist on a position and refuse to learn any other truth. No matter how many things you bring, they would rather walk away than converge. And I think that as young people, that is something that we need to work on, to be accepting and willing to relearn. I see the president accepting to learn in this COVID pandemic process in every address he makes. And the Ministry of Health, of course, is the teacher in many ways. And I think that young people should also be willing to take lessons from things that we have not done, and not just exude in many ways our small political powers in our small elected positions. I call them small figuratively, not that they're actually small. They can cause an issue. So I am very insistent that these people, the faiths of this world, the people that act, the VHTs, have a better understanding of the issues of the area in terms of their profession, because they've been doing it for a very long time. And we have just come in now and realized it's an issue, and we're thinking, let's address it. So we need their help, we need their expertise, and that collaboration is what will deliver in the country, not the stampeding of other actors in the interest of being the face of the action. And I am always happy to lead the National Youth Council, to have maybe Faith make an address on sexual reproductive health and rights in front of the president, if necessary, if that is a topic that they, and it doesn't have to be me. We are always happy. I think I've learned this most from the Assistant Commissioner, because whenever we have a meeting of international nature as a country, he makes sure that the youth leadership of the country speaks, even when he is there and he's senior, and he knows the issues better. So I think that this is something that we should take a leaf from. I thank you, and may God bless us.
Okay. I would like, this conversation is something, or this panel discussion is something that we could talk and talk and talk the whole day, because there are a lot of issues, but I believe all the responses that you have given are satisfactory to all our online viewers who are watching, but also even I feel we are moving in the right direction, I would honestly like to say. Now this morning, you know, when we talked about issues of children, there is a comment that came through when somebody said, when you have children, you need to grow up. The child is a human being with physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, and mental needs. And I felt like, okay, this was really true in terms of what they were saying. And it also brings me back to what he said, the young people of the day. The need to accept and the willingness to learn or relearn. You get it. It is very important, because I believe once these are all put in play, then we'll all be able to move in the right direction. I would just like each one of you to use a minute to give a word to the young person watching you out there. I'll start with you, Agnes, from that side. 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much for giving me yet this another opportunity. I encourage young people out there watching me to visit the facility for information. We've always grappled with young people having inadequate information. Don't go to the health center because you're sick, but also to seek also information. And our youth there in the community, we also mentioned, please work with the existing structures within your communities, and we see to it that our health and well-being of our young people is improved. And we also encourage you also to work more with the family. I know it starts from you. Someone mentioned that you have to be a role model, so the way you also conduct yourself should also it should also come from you, and it is really paramount. So it goes back to you. Look at these people you're leading in a socio-ecological model. There are institutions within, there are cultural institutions, there are education institutions, and many more different institutions in order to address the issues of the young people. Then finally, stay safe. COVID is real. Maintain the SOPs, maintain social distance, wash your hands wherever. Thank you very much.
Okay. Jacob, in a minute.
Thank you. In 1 minute, I would like to tell my fellow young people in this country that this country's hope is in those that are coming up. It's not in those that are going. And those are people such as you and I. We must be examples of that hope. We must take that hope with responsibility and take initiative to actually achieve a future that does not have the same problems we're talking about today, to be hearing them among the young people of the future. So I look forward to more time and more conversations with young people in this country for the sole purpose of collaborating to achieve young people-led and focused leadership in this country. I thank you.
Okay, Faith.
Thank you so much, Sophie, and thank you everyone out there viewing us. And maybe in still 1 minute, I want to highlight that my basic recommendations to really address these gaps is let's try, as government, we need to try to widen the consultation to be more inclusive of the diversity of young people, right from the refugees to the ones living with special needs to the ones in urban areas, slum areas, to just cover that. And also strengthen youth-adult partnership, because this is the only way. We have to work with adults as young people. We need to learn from them, they need to learn from us, and together we can cause a very good synergy. And also, you know, continue building the capacity of both adults and young people to just know the importance of working together and seeing that we value each other's opinions and you know, ideas, and together we can build a very strong kind of thing. To my young people, my dearest superpower out there, I know you're watching me and you're wondering, what can I do in my small capacity? The change starts with you, and you know, it is not any different. Like, it's not so hard to start, you know, to learn something, to want to engage in that community meeting and, you know, air your view. You can start with yourself in your family saying, no, I think maybe if your sister is not going to school and you're a boy, it's you to tell your father, no, they have to go to school with me. No, they have to, you know, they have to be part of this decision. So it starts with you. And I need you to interest yourselves in learning about these policy-making processes. You can ask your leader in the community, could be the LC1 or something, but you need to learn about these processes, because believe me or not, these policies impact your lives very highly, and it's only you to take the initiative to influence it to the direction that will work for you and those after you. And above all, I know most of the time you may not be invited to that table, but I want to encourage you that when you see a table, people seated discussing something that matters, carry your seat to the table. You know, take yourself there, learn about it, contribute about it, be aggressive. Sometimes it takes that extra push for these adults to appreciate that actually you have something important to say. So let's not sit on ourselves. I know right now COVID is taking a toll on us, but please, when you're having these mental health issues, reach out to someone, speak to someone. If you have access to social media, you can access any of us to talk about it, you know, and just seek solutions. Together we can beat this and we can emerge as, you know, winners, but above all, people that are really contributing to this country. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now, Commissioner Mondo, in a minute, please.
Thank you very much, Sophie, and thank you, UBC and NBS, and thank you, colleagues on the panel. And people out there who have been with us, working with us, thank you for your ideas and your views. Let me just say that in the words of J.F. Kennedy, that things don't happen. things are made to happen. So if we want to improve on the terrain of youth engagement, it's you and me to play our roles and ensure that we improve on youth engagement. We lose nothing, but we have everything to gain. And two, Robin Sharma, a leadership coach, he says, in the world, we don't always get what we want, but we get what we work for. If we want youth engagement, let's work for it. Let's do everything possible to gain from the young people. They have wealth of knowledge on things we are talking about. And lastly, youth must seek to know. Amongst all the rights that young people have, the right not to know is not there. And in this age of ICT, there is no reason that young people can seek to be ignorant. You don't have a right to be ignorant. And finally, this is something I also believe in. Young people out there, family planning is the way to go. We are not talking about quantity of human beings. We are talking about the quality of human beings. Produce only the number of children you know you are capable of looking after. Stop inconveniencing your mummies, your daddies, the grandparents of your children to look after your children. Produce what you can look after. Make sure the resources you have can provide quality to these children. That one I beg of you. Let's stop the business of saying, God said, go multiply and fill the world. It's not your responsibility alone to feed and fill the world. After all, God himself, who is the richest, produced only one child, Jesus Christ. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everybody. I can see his winding up remarks have left each one of you with a smile. I would also like to thank so much the partners that have made this possible and all of you who've been on board. That is Ministry of Health, ably represented, Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, civil society organizations, National Youth Council, UNFP, and not forgetting AIDS Information Center, Uganda. Thank you so much, Tadeo, for coordinating all this. Thank you so much for keeping it on UBC and NBS TV. For now, we hand you back to normal programming.
Uganda has the world's youngest population with over 78% below the age of 30. The unfortunate reality is that the majority of the youth continue to face unemployment, underemployment, lack of skills, and a lot more challenges. The good news is that youth are effective advocates who can hold their governments accountable for delivery of promises, policies, and programs that affect their health and well-being. Join us for a high-level dialogue on youth engagement and strategy with representatives from National Youth Council, Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Ministry of Health, United Nations Population Fund, and civil society organizations.